are now tuned into People City Propaganda. I'm your host, Jason Reedy. We now bring you the final part of our conversation with Baba Akili, discussing his 52 years of organizing.
Well, so then the last part of the 80s, yes. you were national organizer for the Jesse Jackson presidential campaign in 1988. So tell us about how you got in that position and what Jesse Jackson has meant to the movement and to Black people.
Well, a couple of things. When it started in '84, when Jesse announced that he was going to run, I wound up being the coordinator in San Diego, and then Jesse said that he was going to run again. And some people I had worked with in the 70s, that I knew, asked me if I would come on as one of the national organizers. Ron Daniels, who is now the president of the Institute of the Black World, and Ron and I have worked together over a long time. And so I got asked to be a national field coordinator for the Jackson campaign, and I worked the South, New York, Ohio, and California, in large part because what his campaign was around is the alternative. Even though he was within the Democratic Party, he was the voice, he was the most progressive voice. And this year, and this is the same year that Al Gore was a presidential candidate. Biden, who had dropped out early because he got caught with
plagiarism. Yeah, I remember that.
Who else?
I don't, but I've heard about it. This was the year that I was born.
Oh, okay. And so Jesse, was the articulate voice of a real progressive side, the whole Rainbow Coalition piece, and we won in those days it was Super Tuesday, where all of the states in the South were devoted on one Tuesday. We won Super Tuesday, and it shocked the shit out. It shocked the Democrats.
Shocked the shit.
It did, and it was of the 6 campaigns that I've worked in since 1980. That one and the last one with Obama was probably the best. I certainly learned a lot from that experience. And part of the reason why I'm a candidate today is because of what I saw Jesse being able to do with his candidacy, and how that first of all galvanized people, because people tend to galvanize around those kind of political figures. A few years later, Al Sharpton and other people have done that since. But he was the first to do that. He was the first to do it from a clearly progressive position, which left the others, way out in right field, and literally. But what he did, one was galvanize people, but he registered over 3 million people that year. He really put attention on why it was important for people to be involved in politics, that we can't leave it to the same people all the time, and that having a Black voice, even as articulate and as powerful as it was absolutely and unquestionably necessary. So when that campaign for me, I knew that we could have a Black president, because I had seen what he had done and how close he had come, and the impact his candidacy made. And so it was a good campaign. Once again, all the skills I had learned through my work with the Farm Workers and Forward were applied in that campaign, of how to build an organization, how to maintain an organization, particularly when you didn't have a lot of resources.
Can we touch on 2 of the other campaigns?
Please.
In the 90s?
Yes.
You deepened your work in the political field, becoming a field coordinator for Carol Moseley Braun, who in 1993 became the first Black woman to ever be elected to the U.S. Senate. And also you were field coordinator for Harvey Gantt.
Oh, yes.
Was that 90 or 96?
90.
So, and historically, Harvey Gantt is known as Charlotte's first Black mayor, was the first Black student to attend Clemson. He lost that very tight race in 1990. So kind of, can you tell us what were some of the challenges y'all faced?
Yeah, let me take Harvey Gantt first.
Yep.
I'm with neighbor to neighbor.
Yep.
I would have done anything to beat Jesse Helms. He was a senator, U.S. senator then. He was a segregationist. He was a clear.
Oh, this is the one. Yes, I remember watching The Last Dance. And there's a whole bit about Michael Jordan. So now this name is bringing. Okay.
So Harvey Gantt was an abomination, and I mean not Harvey, Jesse Helms, and I would have done anything to defeat him. I got a call from neighbor to neighbor to say, can you go to North Carolina? One of the things that had happened in the 70s, Marshall Gantt, who was Caesar's strategist, had come up with, and we used to talk about this a lot. How do we move people from being inactive and active, and what are the barriers to that? And we talked about it, and I remember staying up late at night talking about how we do this. And one of the things that he observed was that most politicians go after the people who always vote. It's the people who seldom vote or never vote that get overlooked. And so he put together this whole campaign of just going after them. And it helped. And Alan Cranston, who was the U.S. Senator at the time, was in real trouble. He looked like he was going to be defeated by a Republican, a former Democrat who turned Republican. And he came to Marshall. Marshall put together this 1 to 100 program, and we were able to build a network and help him win. The people who were running Harvey Gantt's campaign heard about that, and they wanted it, and they wanted somebody black to do it, and it was me. And so they wanted me to come to North Carolina, and run that 1 to 100. And it is a very simple thing. We get you. Because you vote all the time.
Like, hey, I'm known for it.
We get you to talk to the people who don't vote or haven't voted. And so we would get these names of 100 people. It really wound up being more like 60 because their numbers were bad. And then you would call those people. And then we would call you every night, and we would find out how many people you talked to. And the idea was to get to zero. So and you would say, I live in your neighborhood, and I'm voting for Harvey Gantt. I'm counting on you to vote. These became your people, and it worked. We didn't win for a couple of reasons. One, we were taking nightly polls, and we were winning. And one of the things that Helms people did toward the last, I think, 3 weeks of the campaign, and we didn't figure this out until it was too late, he had come on with a commercial that said said Harvey Gantt supports quotas, and there's this plaid shirt and this guy reading this thing, and he balls it up and throws it away because he didn't get the job. And that message was tremendous because they had been trying. I mean, they had put together commercials showing Harvey Gantt coming out of gay clubs. That he,
Jesus.
I mean, I'm seriously, they were really desperate.
Yeah.
But that particular one about he supported quotas, which was, of course, if you support quotas, then that means you support white people not getting jobs and black people getting jobs. Right. And we didn't have a commercial slick enough to go back against it. He went on the road and defended and the rest, but it wasn't as slick as that commercial. The other thing that happened, that commercial, and they had been making this argument all along, but we didn't get it, that Harvey Gantt got things that you, hardworking white person, didn't get. So Harvey Gantt is the first person, to go to Duke. He lived in public housing. All of the things that you, good, hardworking white person, can't get. And so they were making that message all along. We didn't see that. We didn't get it, I think, until too late. And then they capped it off with, and he supports quotas. So we wound up, we raised enough money. We engaged enough voters. What we didn't anticipate was that the voter turnout in the eastern part of the state, the western part of the state, in the mountain parts, the real rural parts, was going to be higher than it normally was. We were projecting it would be 55 to 56%. It wound up being close to 60% because of that message. And Harvey Gantt was the first black person nominated by a major party, since the Reconstruction. And one of the things I always appreciated about Gantt was that he never had a different message for white people and one for black people. He had the same message across the board. Not because he was black, he explained it differently to black folks in ways that we talk and communicate with each other. But it was the same message. He never tried to adjust his message. Certainly he adjusted it for the crowd, and he understood that. But it was the same message. But it was a valuable lesson there.
Do you think, real question, had Michael Jordan endorsed him or supported him, that would have turned the tide? Or
No,
okay,
because it wasn't enough. And we argued about this at the end as we did our debriefings and stuff. That's when we saw this message about how Harvey Gantt was getting these privileges and preferences that you hardworking white man can't get. That was their constant message. We didn't get it, and it was capped off with he supports quotas. The second thing that they talked about, because this was really always an underlying position, that he is going to just turn the state over to black folks. And then finally the whole communist, because that was still in the days of the Red Scare, that he had flown over a communist meeting one time, but that he had people around him as communist sympathizers. When I went to work in the campaign, I could not say I was from LA.
Wow.
I had to say I was from the Charlotte office.
Oh.
I could not say I was from San Diego. I could not say I was from California. They said, just say you're from the Charlotte office.
California, let's call it, right?
Yes.
Gotcha.
And so underneath that was a lot of red baiting. Yeah. So it was, they did some horrific commercials around abortions and stuff, dead babies. But that our polling nightly didn't show what was happening. What the polls didn't show was the resistance, or rather the lack of support that we had among rural whites in the western part of the state. Valuable lessons from that campaign. And the most valuable lesson to me is I'm leaving, and we kind of bummed because we lost, and we narrowly lost. We raised the money. We did everything we set out to do except win. And I'm sitting in the airport heading back, and these group of people come up to me, young people come up to me, and said that they had heard me speak at one of the mobilization rallies for Harvey Gantt, and that's why they decided to get involved. And amazing. Yeah. So that made the sting a little less harsh. And then following that, I went to neighbor. We had moved into the single payer program at this time, and what neighbor to neighbor decided to do, instead of giving candidates money, they would send organizers. And so they asked me if I would go to Chicago and work on the Moseley Braun campaign, and it wound up being the Clinton Unity campaign, because she had said that she would support single payer. And so I did, and that's how I got into her campaign. And this is one of the examples of the other side just really had a bad candidate. If you said, let me try to find somebody I can run against, it just can never win. Oh, how about this? And so they found a bad candidate. They couldn't raise money for him, didn't have much of a base. Clinton was, a popular president at the time, even though he had his issues. And she wound up winning. And we put together a good campaign for her, unfortunately, she couldn't hold it because the Republicans learned from that example, and they nitpicked and went after her the smallest little things. Like she had a boyfriend who he had a contract. I think he was supporting some dictatorship in Africa, and they found out about it, and they used that against her. And by the time it was for re-election, she had been pretty much undermined, and the right wing had done a much more effective job of really laying this. And Clinton didn't help because he was going through his own thing at the time.
His own thing.
Yeah.
One of many. Yeah. Whitewater.
This was after Whitewater.
Okay.
But he was going through, the impeachment stuff. He had been with the,
cigar.
All of that. None of that helped. None of that helped the Democratic Party. Yeah. And she had already been weakened by some other stuff, and so she didn't win re-election. But it was a good campaign.
Okay. And so
this is just like a treasure trove of experience. I love it.
Amazing. So we get to the 2000s. After doing so much work outside the system, at the turn of millennium, you make your way inside the system, working as a special assistant to California Assembly Speakers Herb Weston and Antonio Villaraigosa. Uh-huh. To start, what is the role of a special assistant?
There is a political role. You just, it's
Consult, like you're.
No, you basically you're his political person in the communities. I took that position, and it was one of the three things in life I thought I'd never see. I thought I'd never see Nelson Mandela out of prison and president of South Africa. I thought I'd never see a U.S. Malcolm X stamp. I had seen a Ghanaian stamp, but I thought I'd never see a U.S. Malcolm X stamp. And I thought I'd never see myself working for an elected official because I wanted to stay independent, so if I had to challenge them. But some friends of mine, Marco Palmer and Martin Ludlow and some other people I had worked with in SEIU, and said, brother, come up here and do this. He was speaker at the time, but he really wanted to was going to run for mayor. And we need organizers to help us because he wants to build, he wants to really build a process and get in the community. And because I knew and trusted these people and I'd work with them, I said, okay. And I was only supposed to be here 9 months. And I told him that when I interviewed him. I interviewed him.
Okay.
He interviewed me, but I interviewed him because I wanted, and I had known Antonio from the work I had done with Jobs with Peace in the mid 80s. I'd come up here and I trained organizers for Anthony Thigpen, who is now with California Calls and the Working Family Party. But we had put an initiative on the ballot in 87. Oh, no, it must have been 89 because it was after the Jackson campaign, to get the city to redirect its spending because that was when the Cold War was ending and, we were supposed to have this peace dividend and the rest. And so we put an initiative on the ballot to get the city to divest from military investments to community investments. We put that on. That was the first initiative that had been put on the ballot in years, since 1936. And so I'd come up here to work with Anthony Thigpen to do that. Well, Karen Bass and Antonio and Larry Franks and were part of that. Were part of what we were doing. I had met Karen in the anti-apartheid days. She had come to San Diego State. She was a student there then, and she had heard me speak, and she got involved in the efforts that we were doing. But that's that. So I knew Antonio from that, and then when I got the call to come work with him again, I kind of reminded him of that, and they wanted to make sure that this wasn't just a complete sellout.
Well.
Yes,
maybe not.
Yeah, I missed it that time. But I came in, but I had intended to go back to San Diego, and then one door opened to another and another, and I've been here now for the past 24 years.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's how I got here. I was very much I had always gone back to San Diego after every campaign, I'd always run. My daughters are there. I didn't get married until 1996. So, but my Leah, the first time, my daughters were there. The work that I had been doing was there. And so I was going to come up here do this like I had done before, and I'd go back to San Diego. But one thing led to another, and here I am.
Yeah. You mentioned SEIU. Can you mention some of the work you did towards the tail end of the 2000?
Yes. Not the tail end. I worked with SEIU as an international organizing to get the public authority for home care workers. And then in, I think, 2009, I went to work for SEIU 1000. It was a unique experience because prior to that, they had been CSEA, which was an association, and they didn't want to be a union. And so they were looking for organizers because they wanted to break away from the association. They wanted to be a real union. And so they found a bunch of us from the farm worker movement and asked us to come on staff as senior organizers and help them build they had the semblance of the union, but they couldn't be it because they were part of the association. It was so bad that they couldn't wear purple, so they had to dress up their purple in Laker colors.
Oh, okay.
That's how bad it was. Now this is the California State Employees Association, and they didn't want to be a union, but some of them in that union, the state, wanted to be a union, so they wanted to break away, and so that's how I got there and helped them work through becoming a real union, in large part around, once again, listening to people, engaging them, getting them to see that the meaning, value, and impact of a real union and what it meant. The association had done some good things, but they caved too soon for most. They gave in. They never really protested. They never really fought for workers. And what SEIU 1000 would do was fight for workers, and that's what they wanted. So that was in the right after leaving Herb's office. So it was in the early 2000s. That may, if very quickly, at least raise for you 2008 being the Obama trainer. And
trainer of what?
Well, one of the things about the Obama campaign was he took what Marshall had been trying to do and talked about and applied it. And put together what we call these Obama trainings, Obama schools. And it trained people in how to do one-on-ones. It trained people in how to build organizations. It trained people. It had been introduced in 2004 in the Kerry campaign. Once again, farm work those of us who had worked in the farm worker movement was called the campaign director for what's that guy that shouted and wound up getting out the race?
Oh, Howard Dean.
Howard Dean.
Yeah.
His campaign.
He was going to win too.
Yeah,
he did that.
Had called together Paul and I think Fred Jr., but I'm certain Paul Milne. And Paul introduced this concept of combining political organizing and community organizing with doing this house meeting approach. And it worked well in a small state like New Hampshire. And so Karen Hicks really liked it. But then Dean imploded. But then she wound up becoming the field director, national field director for the DNC, for the whatever the party was. And she called Paul and Marshall and all of us back. I remember us meeting in Boston the day before the Obama speech in the Kerry campaign, and working this out and how to do this. And she said, "Okay, let's do this." And so they brought on all of us. I mean, it was a farm worker reunion, and we went and set up these what we call organizational relationship building, and so we would go in communities and build a network and get people to, but the DNC never believed it, never supported it, and if there was a glitch or a breakdown, they said, fuck it, and they got away from it, went back to what they were doing, and I think it certainly contributed to the to Kerry's loss in 2004. Obama got it, and so he wanted to do it, and so here we are back together again. And this is after before he got the nomination. He had bits and pieces of it because he had a few of us who were with the farm workers movement. But once he got the nomination, they brought us all together again. Once again, it's all of us. We trained people in how to do these one-on-ones. We trained people in how to do house meetings. I mean, we build the same process. He embraced it. He used it. He adjusted it because, once you're in the field and on the ground, you have to adjust it. Marshall didn't, but never really liked that. Never forgave him for that. But he applied it. And so we started these Obama trainings, and they would be 2 weekends, and we would bring people together and really train them on how to do one-on-ones, train them how to do house meetings, train them how to do volunteer recruitment and all the rest of that. And I helped shape a lot of that. Most of it, matter of fact, I still use those forms and that process. I've advanced on it today. And it contributed to, at least from my vantage point, the three things that I thought that I appreciated about the Obama campaign. One, he was a disciplined candidate. He stayed on message, unlike Kerry. Kerry was not disciplined. He didn't always stay on message. But Obama was. He stayed on message. Two, he had a good field operation. And anybody could be a field person for Obama because they would give you a list and you just call people in Nebraska. and so you ain't have to come in, and then secondly, he had and used technology well.
Yeah, he was the first social media candidate.
Yes,
sure.
I mean, he used Facebook and to have all these meetings, and the combination of the three. Well, and one other thing, his own personality, and got to take that in, and that's a part of the discipline candidate. And he ran a discipline, and he embraced the organizing principles and processes that we had introduced and that was working. Many of us were sorely disappointed because the first thing he did once he got elected was turn that shit over to the DNC, and it was killed. And along with many of the state people who had worked to get him elected, and as he moved to healthcare, wanted to take the same approach that we took to get him elected to fighting for healthcare. They wanted to use let's tell stories and then use those stories to move people. But they didn't move them to take an action. They just moved them to, yeah, you're right, we need this to be done. And that's the downside of letting the DNC run anything for you. So
true.
Yeah. But the 2008 Obama campaign was among the best that I had worked outside of the 1988 Jackson campaign. I remember coming up with a plan, for South LA. And it's like, if we could get 120 volunteers in here a week, we could make X number of phone calls. And so that was my plan. They accepted that. And I wound up, and it's not me. It was Obama and the historic nature of it, the symbolism and all the rest. We wound up with over 300 people a week. Now, the other thing that we were doing was we were calling people damn near out the phone book, not quite that bad. But anybody who said they ever believed in or supported Obama, and we had a phone number, we were calling. So on the one hand, we had 5 people a day calling any and every number we had, and and so to get them in, we were doing these orientations where we would train people how to do this, what to do, and the meaning and impact of what they were doing, the meaning, value, and impact of what they were doing, and then they would come in. And phone. And so, we were above 300 people a week. And, and on the weekends, we could get 200 and 300 people to show up. At one point, my biggest role that I played was out of the way. I put my office so far away that you'd had to catch a bus to get to me, because what was happening is people were, once we set the context for them to do it and what it meant, all I had to do was, one, support them. And I have this basic principle, and I've had it now for many years of people I work with. I respect you, I'll trust you, and I'll support you. I respect you, I trust your judgment, and I'll support you when the time comes. And that I could leave people, not leave them, but once I set the context, and we met every night. I don't care what time it was. We met. I started doing that in the Jesse Helms in the Harvey Gantt campaign. No matter what time it was, we had to meet at the end of the night because we had to get a count for what the day was. So we knew how close we were getting to our target of getting X number of voters, because they were reporting to us every night. The other thing about that time period, we had something called emergency meetings. So he would call you because he's a voter all the time. Mm-hmm. And you and the two of you don't vote, and he would call you and say, "We're having an emergency meeting at our office this evening at 6 o'clock. We gotta stop the Republicans from taking over our and winning the Senate seat." And so that was the emergency, and people would come in. So we started doing that, and we started having 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and 6 o'clock emergency meetings. And that's how we recruited people. And we recruited the always voters, to get to the occasional voters. That process worked extremely well with the Obama campaign, except we didn't have to have emergency meetings. And so we could literally call through Democratic list and say, we need for you to come in. Barack Obama has a chance to win. We need you to help us win. Can you come in? And people would show up. Now, the historic nature of his campaign and all the rest of that added to it, but it was one of, and it combined those three elements: a disciplined, personality, great field operation, and great technology.
So at the turn of 2010, you became the National Field Director for the Social Security Works campaign. You want to touch on that a little bit?
Yes, I had gone to Washington. I was the Western Regional Field Director for the NAACP, and we were meeting every 6 weeks or so. The field directors got together in Washington or Baltimore, and I saw a friend of mine who was the field director, but he was moving to another position with another group, and asked me if I wanted to do this. And I was like, man, I'm doing this work, except that this work isn't working out. The NAACP thought that they wanted me because they had heard about what I had done with the Obama campaign and all that. They thought that they wanted that. They're not set up like that. They're a 101-year-old bureaucracy that doesn't move as fast or as far as they need to, particularly given what's at stake. My biggest accomplishment being the Western Regional Field Director for the NAACP is I got them to accept that we do with people, not for people. That, for me, is my biggest accomplishment. But I'm in D.C. I see a friend of mine. He says, listen, I'm working on this thing, man, but I'm getting ready to become the director of this. I need for somebody to come in who has some organizing skills to help, because the Republicans want to raise the retirement age to 72. And that would have been just tremendously harmful. And Obama was at the table looking at it like, well, you sure it's got to be 72, 71. And so we're like, oh no, this will be terrible. And so I left the NAACP and accepted this National Field Director spot for Social Security Works. And primarily what I did was go around and work with groups, mostly organized groups, former ACORN groups, many of them, and one, to get them to get this message that, hands off of Social Security, and we don't want to work till we die. That was the whole campaign.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of takeoffs on that. I mean, we did a whole bunch of zombie things. I mean, and we targeted members of Congress. And so it was another one of those good opportunities for me where I got a chance to go around the country a lot. I would leave LA and go to Washington. I'd go from Washington to Charlotte, from Charlotte to Orlando, from Orlando to Little Rock, from Little Rock to Denver, from Denver to Albuquerque, and then back to LA.
Damn.
Wow.
And then spending about 2-3 days in each city. But that had been a pattern for me when I was the national field director for Jobs for Peace. I would leave San Diego and go to Boston, from Boston to Baltimore, from Baltimore to Pittsburgh, from Pittsburgh to Milwaukee, and back to San Diego.
Wow.
And many of the people I've trained, because these people were trained in that 6-week period. And so part of the training was that I would do the follow-up, because I saw the training like eating. You eat and you get full, but the body breaks down the food, and the valuable food you need and keep, the other food, it gets rid of. And so it wasn't enough to take you through the training. I had to take you through the next process, which was applying what you learned in your environment. They all were trained out here in LA. So when they went back to their respective cities, I would then follow up. So, but that's a part of being a field director.
Wow. So then I want to go to 2020. I'm not hopping ahead. I want to just set the scene here. It's maybe 2 or 3 weeks after George Floyd was murdered. You and I are standing in a mutual aid space in Hollywood.
Yes.
We're about to do a segment with Jacob Soboroff on CNN about what's going on, the uprising, how people are, I think pandemic's popping off or whatever. And we're like, giving food to people. So like, oh, look at what the communities are doing. And I remember before the cameras were rolling, we were talking about, George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And you had said that over your lifetime, you've seen so many instances of Black people being killed by the system, either by police or by, white supremacists. And that the earliest memory you had was of Emmett Till.
Emmett Till, yes.
And that, obviously, so I want to kind of go along that line of Emmett Till is from when you're very young. I'm sure as you are organizing over the years, you heard of other people in other, right? I mean, Amadou Diallo, like all these people over time that were wronged by the system, were killed by it. And then Trayvon Martin gets killed and Black Lives Matter, which I think you would say is maybe some of the most important work of your lifetime.
Oh.
So that happened. So I want to go through that through line of like how it made you feel, what you felt when those things happened over the years, and then how Black Lives Matter came out of that moment, and the work that you've done since then.
Yeah, I got introduced to Black Lives Matters in late 2013, early 2014. I was working with I was the senior advisor and trainer for the Black Worker Center. And I knew Melina from a long time ago because, she had volunteered to go up to San Francisco to work for Willie Braun to help him get elected mayor. So I knew them. I knew a lot of those people. And she saved my bacon during the Obama campaign because she was able to get students to come in every night and help us with the tabulation that we needed to do. So I had known her for a long time. And I remember getting this call. Well, and after the verdict, many people gathered in the Mert Park and they took over the freeway. And then they started meeting at St. Elmo's Place on Sundays. And I went to a couple of those meetings. They were very energetic, a little chaotic sometimes. So I knew about what was going on, and I knew the people. And I'm at the Black Worker Center. They need somebody to help them rent vans because they're going to go to Ferguson because of what's happening with Mike Brown at the time. And I say, okay, I'll do it, and I'll go. And I wound up driving literally 24 hours the van from LA. And we should never do this again. I think we had 12 people in the van. And we drove all day and night, and I did most of the driving. And I was there when Black Lives Matters went from a statement to a movement, because over 600 people had come to Ferguson from around the country. We convened, we talked about how do we wanted to make sure that we were moving from a moment to a movement, that we didn't just want this sporadic uprising, this sporadic outrage. We wanted to be able to keep it going. And people went back in different groups and they started, that's when it went from the hashtag in my mind to a statement to a movement. And that's how I got involved. I stayed involved. As we were going after the police in the early 2014 and 2015, the idea of us occupying and sleeping out had become a very common thing. I have pictures of us camping out in front of 100 First Street to get rid of Charlie Beck in 2015. We actually camped out. And so I've been involved with them through our evolutions, through our successes, getting rid of Charlie Beck, doing that 54-day occupation that we did out in front of City Hall. And that I think 2016 to 2017. You
got rid of Jackie Lacey.
Jackie Lacey, the 3.5-year every Wednesday protest to get rid of Jackie Lacey. And one of the things that people, if you don't know, you tend to think that the mobilizations and all them people turning up, that really, no. If you don't have a structure in an organization and you haven't done the work, that level of organizing, the mobilization rather that happens, is purely symbolic and it dissipates. Because we had been doing this every week, because we had been protesting, because we had been in the streets, we were able to capture a lot of that, direct a lot of it, and harness it. And that helped certainly support and advance what we were doing, particularly as it related to Jackie Lacey. But as we were doing other things, one of the things I talk about a lot is that that Black death is too high a price to pay for any people to wake up a society. Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd. That's too high a price to pay. Emmett Till. I'm 7 years old, I think. I'm listening to my aunts and uncles. My aunts are crying. Oh, what they did to that boy was terrible. How could they do, because they put it in the Jet magazine. And my uncles, having a few drinks and, woofing and talking about how the white man needs to be taken care of and all that kind of stuff.
You were like, hold up, let him cook.
And I'm listening to this, and I'm listening to my aunts and them talk about how terrible this is. And I saw the pictures in the Jet magazine as a young child, and so it had an impact then and over the years. And so now here I am, 60 years later, and George Floyd, and you can see the look in Chauvin's eye as he pressed down on George Floyd's neck. He never accepted or recognized the humanity. And if you can train people to do that, and police are trained to do that, then that's how you wind up with George Floyd's. He held his foot on George Floyd's neck, his knee on George Floyd's neck, despite his protesting, despite his willingness to give in, all the rest of that. This was about power, exercising power against someone that was subhuman. It was okay, and you could see the look in his eyes. Remember, he had his hand in his pocket, and his foot on his knee on George Floyd. And so that outrage, that kind of disgust that happened when people saw that, pushed people to the streets. Had there not been a Black Lives Matters and the work that we had been doing, they would have protested. They would have expressed their outrage and disgust. But I'm not so sure what would have happened after that. We were in place. We could capture it. We could harness it, and we could direct it toward Jackie Lacey, toward other things that were happening. Measure J, a whole series of other things. But that was only because we were in position to do it and had already been organizing.
What do you think it was about 2013 and that specific moment in time that made Black Lives Matter? Like, why of all the times for it to happen, was it 2013? Was it the social media age? What do you sort of point to?
I have, with many of my friends, talked about that because a few years earlier, in 2006, a similar kind of thing had happened with Devin Braun, a young man, 14-year-old who was that the police had shot and killed over on 83rd and 83rd in Vermont. It was a similar kind of thing. And we met every night at Bethel AME Church for years. And we went to the police commission, which was at that time in a closet, and protested and did a lot of that. And we were able to maintain it and we got public policy changed, because what the investigation found out was, how when you put a car into gear or take it out of gear, it kind of lurches ahead. Mm-hmm. Well, they used that as the rationale for why they shot into the car 14 times. 10 times they hit this young man. He's 14 years old. And so the police were using that as a pretext for why they opened fire. Well, we got that policy change. That even if a car is slowly moving toward, you can't interpret that as a weapon, and you can't, just open fire like that. But it didn't have the same impact as what happened in 2013, 5 years later, or a few years later, with Trayvon Martin. Partly because it was equally as egregious, but it was a vigilante that was doing this. And most of us just was willing to accept that he would be found guilty, even though there were no charges filed shortly after it happened. It was only through protests that happened. But we were willing to believe that the justice system would would come out right. It didn't. And when you believe one thing or want to believe one thing and it don't happen, you are not only disappointed, you're mad. And we were mad. And, you know, the idea of the hoodie, you know, and all the rest of that. And that captured the imagination. And these three powerful organizers, Opal Tometi, Elisa Garza, and Patrice Cullors, were communicating electronically with each other about how bad this was, about the impact of what's happening, and how could this happen? Do Black Lives Matter? And then I think it's Opal, if I remember correctly, said that she's, you know, sent the hashtag back, Black Lives Matters, and that became the statement of the phrase. And you can read this. You can read about very easily about who sent, you know, but they had been communicating with each other through electronic, you know, texting and emailing and Facebooking, and in the early days, I guess it was the early days of Twitter, communicating about how terrible this was. And then when it happened, the explosion of how could this happen? You know, how could you find this man not guilty? You know, he wasn't doing anything. He didn't have a weapon, you know, and all the rest. The other thing that was connected to that was the demeaning way the witnesses were treated. They attacked their pronunciations. They attacked their presentations. These were young Black people who were, you know, who talked like Black people do, with the kind of emphasis that we have. But that was attacked. All of that came together, I think, to enrage us. It just so happens that these three organizers captured that rage and captured it first in a sentiment, then in a statement, and then in actions. And from that day to this, I mean, we've been around now 10 years. We are celebrating our 10th year. You know, and we went through a number of changes and ups and downs. But the idea that, you know, we wanted to start a movement, not a moment. And it has those elements that I talked to you about. The demand in state-sanctioned violence. The challenge, well, we challenged the police and we've challenged elected officials. That challenge has been met with resistance, which has led to confrontations. Those confrontations have led to disruption. We exercised some of that this morning.
Many of this.
We went, and this for me is the best work I've done over those past 52 years, in part because it's founded, led, and directed by Black women. And they bring a different form, style, and process of leadership. And they tend to be much more cooperative in their both leadership approach and their willingness to get the work done. And then finally, they tend to be much more willing to step back and let others do. So those are some of the reasons. The other reason is the work that we've done with families. The fact that we give and provide space, comfort, and support for families, and have every Wednesday, even specifically during the Jackie Lacey period. That was when the families got a chance to really share. Because what we learned early on was the families were either lied to, given poor information or no information about what happened to their loved ones. And they grieved in isolation and solitude. And because they didn't have real information, they began to question themselves. What did I do? What did they, as if they and or their loved one did something wrong, you know, when it wasn't them at all. It was an institution that was set up to do this. And so that's why it's been, among the best work that I've done. Black women led, founded, and directed, and the work that we're doing with families.
And I appreciate, I'm a family member of someone killed by police, and Black Lives Matter has always, since my first meeting that I went to, has always allowed me to voice my opinion, my sorrow. And so thank you for holding that space and for giving me and my family a place to feel like we're being listened to and being cared for. So thank you for that.
Well, but that's what I mean about this. You need space to do that.
Yeah.
You need comfort to do it. You got to know that when you share, you're not going to be pushed back or what did they do or, somehow or another implying that you did something wrong. And then finally, you have to be supported. So we wanted to supply space, comfort, and support. And we've been doing that now. Well, now we still do it every Wednesday. But that's why it's among the best work I've done. And certainly being and viewing and participating Black women's leadership and what it has meant.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to what you're doing right now.
So I do. So sorry. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
You are a candidate for the 57th Assembly District
Yes.
here in the state of California. This isn't your first time running. You ran 11 years ago. And so we're wondering, why are you running?
Great.
Why are you in the race?
Well, for the same reason I've done all the rest of the work I've been doing. Certainly I've been on the outside throwing rocks.
One-on-one meetings and house meetings.
Yes.
You get the band back together.
Yes. Get all if I could recruit all of my farm worker friends, primarily to continue the work that I'm doing already. I believe that housing should be a human right, and I want to fight for that. I don't want to just fight to end homelessness, because if we do that, if we still see housing as a commodity, then some people will, maybe have housing, but they'll be a paycheck away from being homeless again. So I believe if we see it as a human right, we'll protect it as such. And I want to invest in it. I want to make sure that we take the steps that need to be taken to begin to house people right away. And the only way you can do that is you got to build more housing. And so I got a whole series of things that I want to see done. I believe in healthcare as a human right, and I believe the single payer approach is the best way to do that. Look here, if Medicare works for people who are 55 and older, help me understand why it wouldn't work for somebody who's 25.
Well, no.
I mean, come on now. When you get arrested and you go to court and you don't have an attorney, one is appointed for you. They don't ask if you have insurance because the legal process is complicated and you need somebody who can help you work your way through it. That same approach needs to be applying to medicine. And insurance companies don't provide healthcare. They provide paper so that the healthcare provider can get paid. So if you remove them, then you can have a much better system. But it also has to be culturally competent and make sure that we incorporate the understandings and conditions of the people who are being served. I want to see restorative justice programs. I know the value of them. I've been through the value of them. I understand that, and I want to fight for them. I want to see a workers' bill of rights. As we begin to come much into a gig economy where nobody works for anybody, everybody is an independent contractor, and nobody pays into the workers' comp. Nobody pays in, so when you get laid off, you can't get unemployment insurance, or if you get hurt, you can't. If we continue down that road, then workers will always be at a disadvantage. And so I'd like to see a workers' bill of rights that establishes what the rights are of all workers, whether you're in a union or not. But certainly if you're in a union, that's much better for you, having been certainly a part of the labor movement. I want to fight for those things. I have told people for now 50 years, I don't promise victory, I only promise struggle. I want to take that struggle to Sacramento. I want to be a voice. And I'm at the stage in my life where I ain't looking to run for another office. A lot of people run for office with the intent of running for another office. What I mean? I don't have nothing to prove. I mean, look at all the stuff y'all are doing. I mean, I ain't got nothing to prove. I do have a set of beliefs, though. I do have a set of things that I want to see that I think will make this country better. I started out wanting to argue, how do we move from a privilege-based society to a human rights-based society? People said, no, brother, you can't do that. People ain't going to say. And so, okay. But right now, what we have is a privilege-based society. If you can afford it, you can get it. I want to move to a human rights-based society where these are human rights that we should all have access to. Not if you can afford it, not if you stand in line long enough, not if you wish it, you have access to it. And that's what I want to fight for. And I'm learning a lot, I'm reminded of a lot, and being constantly reminded about the nature of politics. Everything that I just said to you, I've said to other people. You know what matters? How much money have you raised, and who endorsed you? And that's part of the reason why I think we get some of the the kind of elected officials we have, because already if you're measured by how much money you have, then that does call into question certain things, because who's giving you the money? Where is it coming from? And then who's supporting you or who's not supporting you? And I think that those are clearly measurements. I'm not suggesting that they're invalid measurements, but if they're the only measurements, then we wind up getting the same kind of people in office that may or may not stand and fight. I have said for many years that if you can't stand, you can't fight. If you can't fight, you can't win, and you need a base to stand on. And that's in large part why I've decided that I wanted to become a candidate. I'm collecting signatures now because I want to make sure I get on the ballot. So if you want to find out more about Akili, you can go to Akili, the number 4, thepeople.com. I also decided I wanted to become a candidate because what I observed about elected officials is that they talk to other elected officials, they talk to staff, and they talk to lobbyists. If they talk to the people at all, it's because we jammed them up. So one of the things I wanted to do is continue to have community meetings and listening sessions. I want to have monthly open house where you can just come see me. You ain't got to get on, check with a scheduler or, get the staff person. I'll be there from 10 to 2 o'clock at this place in the community. And if you want to talk to me, even if you don't agree with me or I don't agree with you, I'm there. All you got to do is sign up. First come, first serve. I want to try to turn the office into an office for the people. People get elected and hold these offices in the name of the people. They don't get elected and hold those offices in their own name. Now, their name may be on the ballot, but that ain't who they represent. And so I want to try to change that, but that comes from all this work I've been doing over these past few years. And I want to try to build a movement for a better South Central, a better Los Angeles, and a better California.
I mean, listen, People's City Council does not endorse candidates, but personally, I know other people who are running in your race and they're fake asses. Like you've just established your bona fides on this show. So anybody who lives in your district who doesn't vote for you is a fool. That's what I'm saying.
I would never go that far.
Oh, no, I'm saying that you obviously are a nice man. You would never say that. I'm just saying as a Albert Corrado, if you live in his district and you don't vote for him, I hate you.
The other thing that this is a working poor immigrant community.
Sure.
And it needs a loud voice. It needs a consistent voice. Too often, this community has not been taken for granted, but not always uplifted. And so people have gone, it's a solidly Democratic district, so you're going to get a Democrat, whether you get a moderate Democrat or a progressive Democrat, but you're going to get one. But you need more than that. You need somebody who's going to fight for folks in the district, not just cast a vote. I'm certainly not throwing no shade on nobody else. That's not it at all. I'm just saying what I want to do for my, based upon my training, based upon my history, and based upon my level of experience and involvement. These are the things, that's why I decided to do this. I want to apply the leadership skills that I developed over the years. I want to apply my capacity to bring people together, see what needs to be done, and fight for it. We may not win everything, but we know if we don't fight for it, we'll get nothing. But I want to do that with the people. I don't want to be just a voice, or just an elected official. And once again, I don't have anything to prove. I find myself, I am literally running as an outsider. The Democratic Party, Labor, and all the rest of us, we know and love you, brother, but we don't know about you. That is, we don't know if you're prepared to go along to get along. No, right. They know I'm not prepared to do that. Almost anybody who knows me more than 10 or 12 seconds will know that. But I'm certainly prepared to work with people, to get things done. But that's not enough. So I'm literally running as an outsider. I'm running as a person who has the endorsement of people like Danny Glover and Dolores Huerta and James Lawson.
Wait, Danny Glover, the actor?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Because these people are movement people. Right. These people are folks involved. Many of the other candidates have a series of elected officials, which will mean they will do pretty much like what's been done.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, and all of the candidates are bright, capable, energetic people, and I think will do well. I don't know if they'll do good.
And that's a good distinction. Any other calls to action for your campaign? And then I want to ask you one last question, unless my co-hosts have anything else
I
to
have
add.
another question.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I like this
But so, yeah, any sort of call to action. I mean, it's Akili #4, thepeople.com.
Yes.
Are you on social media? How do people get involved, volunteer, all that stuff?
Well, first go to the website. I am learning, and you all have helped me learn about the meaning, value, and impact of social media. So we are revving up our social media now. Other than the website, you can go there. The primary thing we need from now is, if we are going to build this movement, we need people to be able to invest time, energy, and resources. We have an objective. We want to get 1,000 signatures so we can get on the ballot and don't have to pay $1,200. So we need people to come out and knock on doors of registered voters and ask them to sign my nomination petition. And I have to raise money. While I understand, and I've raised money for years, and I don't have any problem in asking for money because because I want people to see it as an investment. I know some of us are uncomfortable asking for money because it makes us feel like we need or we don't. No, it's an investment. I've always seen it as investment in the movement, investment in people. So, but I need it. But I have a small donor base. Mm-hmm. Well, I got a large donor base, but it's people with small money, $25, $50, $100 here. So I need a lot of people. So I have to have people to raise, a lot of people to raise money, to be competitive, to be able to get my message to other folks. So 1, I need to raise a lot more money. 2, I need to get signatures on the petition. And 3, of course, we need volunteers. And you can go on the site to volunteer.
KayleeForThePeople.com.
And could you tell us what parts of town does 8057
Thank you so much
encompass?
for asking.
Yeah.
It is South Central Los Angeles. It is Skid Row to the north,
Okay.
Alameda to the east, Western Avenue to the west, and Century Boulevard to the south. Like I said, it's an immigrant working class community, and in some cases working poor. I need 3 things. I've talked to you about the signatures because I want to make sure I get on the ballot. 2, I've talked to you about the money. And one of the things we've been asking people, because I know I got a lot of people say, man, I can't give you but $25. Great. Can you get that over the next 3 months or the next 4 months? Okay. Host a listening. I mean, one of the things I'm doing now is I want to listen to people. This Friday, I'm going to be in Skid Row with Pastor Q. I want to hear what people in Skid Row have to say. Too often we jump into this as candidates and think we know, and rarely ask or listen to the people. I've got some things I want to do. I want to fight for housing. I want to fight for healthcare. I want to fight for restorative justice, and I want to fight for a Workers' Bill of Rights. But I want to hear what people have to say about that, and how they see, understand, and accept their own conditions, and what can be done, and how can we incorporate that in the fights for the things that I believe in. So, we've had a workers listening session. We want to do a houseless listening session. I want to do a listening session around childcare. I want to do a listening session around the Olympics.
Okay, all right.
I want to hear what people have to say. I don't have to agree with it, and I'd like to express to them what I believe in, and they may not agree with it, but they should hear me, and I should hear them.
Yeah. So my last question is, you've been in the game for a long time. You look great. You dress well. Beyond being a leader and being, just a person involved in all this, how does one, as we're here, baby organizers compared to you, how do we make it so we last that long? What do you do outside of this to take care of yourself? Do you have any hobbies? Do you have any things that you do to decompress and forget about the horrors of the world for a second?
One-on-one meetings,
house meetings, yeah,
and the crew back together.
I've been asked this question now for many years. How do you do it? First of all, I never done anything else. You all went through this whole 70s, 80s, and I never really thought about doing anything else. So that was one of the reasons. And I have met phenomenal people that have helped ground me helped me stay and understand why this needs to be done. I've been asking myself that question, what's at stake and what happens if I don't show up? The downside is that it has been difficult sustaining and maintaining relationships. I'm learning about this concept of spirituality and self-care because the generation that I developed in is you work until you drop. You know what I mean? Not Caesar, but Fred used to have this he's still, this saying that evil never takes a holiday, never takes a vacation. So the idea of taking a vacation, and I didn't take a vacation until 2023. 2003.
This year. Wait,
no.
2000. Sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
20, because it just didn't occur to me. It did, but how could you take a vacation? So I grew up in that kind of environment. And so now what I've had to learn is, particularly at my age, I'm 75 now. And every Wednesday I'm reminded of that. Because people hold up signs going like, you're old. No, because I wound up setting up and breaking down, and I'm noticing that I can't do as much as fast as hard. And so I'm learning about two things. The concept of spirituality, which I didn't fully embrace, understand, or figure out how it applied to me. Secondly, there are some things you need to do that can help you sustain yourself for longer periods, which is why I drink tea now. I was a Starbucks drinker. I just drink straight up black Starbucks coffee.
We're boycotting Starbucks right now.
Oh, okay, that's right. Because
free pasta.
But I've tried to get into more healthier teas that get and honey. And I came down in the last 2 years with type 2 diabetes. Now I got it under control, but that has helped me watch my eating habits a lot more. And once again, this idea of maybe taking off some time and letting your body heal and recover. So I'm beginning to learn that. And I'm beginning to understand and accept that it's okay. In my past, that it was not okay, brother. I can't believe you just laying around like that. You better get your ass up and do something around here. You know all the stuff you got to do. Well, you may want to take a day or two every now and then. You know what I mean?
Listen, get a pedicure. They're really. I get them every now and then.
Once, yeah.
They're great. You get your feet right, get your mind right. It's. I'm just saying. You look great, by the way. 75.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Amazing.
Folks, you can find us online. People City Prop on Twitter, People City Council on Instagram, peoplecitypropaganda@gmail.com. If you want to let us know how we're doing, rate and review us on the Apple Podcast app, on Spotify, wherever. Rate us and subscribe on YouTube. Tell your friends about us. Spread the word about Akili's campaign. Akili, I'm telling you, this was very illuminating for me. I think I've known you for 3 years now. This is the longest conversation we've ever had. I could sit here and listen to you talk, forever. So thank you for being on the show. We appreciate you.
Listen, thank you all for your patience and your willingness to hear me out on all these things. You brought back some great memories. If you'd have started a minute or two earlier, I would have given you some prison experiences. But I don't think because it was a formative stage. So I really appreciate the fact that y'all gave me this opportunity, that you all did the research to find out stuff that I had forgotten.
Jason's a master researcher. It's all him.
Forgotten about. Because you just you do the work and you keep moving forward. And so I appreciate that, and I really appreciate your willingness to hear me out.
Anytime, Richie, hit him with it.
Akili, thank you so much for the war stories. People are going to find them very valuable. Google LASD gangs, Stop Cop City, Free Palestine.
Yes.